Alright, we're back here working on the Avanti 2. I had some friends by the other day and they were able to help me get it pushed inside so we could get the fuel leak checked and start working on the brake system to get the brakes working again on this car. So far what I found for the fuel leak, turns out the tank itself wasn't leaking, but just the rubber fuel line that comes out of the little connector piece on the bottom of the tank that goes to the hard fuel line that runs on the frame rail was all dry rotted and split, so that was an easy fix for the fuel line. I put one more piece on where they installed the electric pump in the back. The hose was kind of all squishy and deteriorated, so I fixed that hose too. And I started looking at the brake system on this, and when I popped the cover off the master cylinder, I found pretty much the front reservoir empty. Rear reservoir had just a slight amount of fluid left in it. So I didn't top it off, but I put some fluid in the master cylinder and tried to get the brakes to pump up. Nothing happened. I have tried bleeding out the rear brakes first just to make sure that there is fluid from front to back, and no dice. We got no brakes yet. But I was kind of anticipating that the master cylinder will be bad, so I've ordered one. And funny thing about these Avanti parts is some stuff it takes some work to figure out where the right parts are. Now there are a few dealers out there that deal specifically with Studebaker and Avanti aftermarket parts and replacement parts, and I did find one that listed a master cylinder for these, because when I went to Rock Auto they listed most of the other brake parts except the master cylinder. More on this in a minute. So when I found the master cylinder with the parts dealer that I found online, it had a part number listed that appeared to be a manufacturer part number for the part. So I did some cross-referencing, and comes out that it was a Raybestos master cylinder, that the number was available at most other parts dealers like Napa and O'Reilly's and even Rock Auto. I don't understand why they don't have the part listed, because no mainstream parts house had a master cylinder listed for this car. But when you cross-reference the number, they have the number listed in their parts house. I don't get it. So anyhow, I did end up ordering the master cylinder from Rock Auto because it was $30 less than through the other dealer. Thanks to that other dealer for giving me the parts info. So we're going to go ahead and get the master cylinder changed on this. Go ahead and bleed the brakes out. We'll check the front brakes as far as the calipers for lockup. They don't seem to be sticking at all. The wheels do seem to spin pretty free. So I don't think we're going to have any problems there. And once we have brakes in the car, we're going to work on getting the engine running a little better, so that it'll start up and idle, and see if we can take this car out for a little ride up through the neighborhood. So there wasn't enough room in between the outlet and the side of the fender here to get my syringe placed in here tight to bleed this master cylinder out. So I took it over to the bench and I did it in the vise. But this one here with the bleeder screw I'm going to do on the car. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off this rubber grommet, and instead I'm going to stick a piece of short hose on here, and then go ahead and crack this bleeder screw open. And I'm going to put the hose on the end of the bleeder screw and just force my fluid in, and I can see all the bubbles coming out inside the reservoir. Okay, now I've got no bubbles coming out, just fluid. So I can tighten up my bleeder, take my syringe needle off, tighten up that bleeder screw, and that'll leave this master cylinder bled out and ready. So I should have to do very little bleeding down at the rear wheel cylinders and the calipers in order to have a good, nice, firm pedal. Okay, so I've gone ahead and topped off my reservoirs front and rear. I'm going to get the new cap with the new gasket and put that back on top. Now I did notice when I pulled this old master cylinder off that it didn't appear to be that old, but because this vehicle has been sitting for what the owner told me at least 5 years, probably 6 years. The inspection sticker on this car says 2003, so who knows really how long it's been since it's been driven or moved around the property where it was being kept at. But sitting is a death knell for a master cylinder. The rubber seals just cannot withstand being in non-motion, shall we say. So rust starts to form in the bores, and as soon as you try to pump up that pedal again, it just eats up the seals inside the master cylinder, and that's what kills the master cylinder from sitting for periods of time. So unfortunately, that was a fairly new master cylinder, and it was probably done at the same time all the tune-up work that was done on this car was performed. Because if you watch the Will It Run video that I've put out on this car too, I talked about how most of the tune-up parts, if not all of them, looked fairly new, hardly any miles on. The carburetor looked fairly clean and refreshed. So there was quite a bit of work done to this car prior to it being put up for storage. Unfortunately, some of that work was for naught because time will kill a car. Okay, so I've pumped the pedal up a few times before I put the car up in the air, and I still have no pedal, so that means I've got air in all my lines. So we're just going to do a little gravity bleeding here. So we're going to crack open these bleeder screws here at the back, and we're just going to let them sit here and let the fluid drip out. A lot of people don't know, if you're working by yourself, you can gravity bleed brakes, and it does give you a good hard pedal. The fluid always wants to flow to the lowest point, and right now the lowest point in the system is the bleeder screws at the 4 wheels. So we'll let this sit here for a few minutes and let the air bubbles work its way out of the system back here. That'll give us good solid fluid lines to the back wheels, and then we'll have to take the wheels off the front to get at the bleeder screws on the front calipers. Okay, well, I have let this sit here for a little while and there's not much happening. This happens sometimes with the gravity bleeding method. So I'm going to use our syringe that we use to bleed out the master cylinder, and we're going to use it the reverse way that we did on the master cylinder, and I'm going to attach it to our bleeder screw here. A little tight to get this in here. So now that that's on there, I can use this to draw fluid through the system by creating a vacuum. And there's some fluid starting to come through. Yeah. Alright, so I checked the reservoir. I gave the pedal a few more pumps. So let's crack this bleeder back open again so we can try and draw some fluid out of here once more. I'm gonna see if I can get this bleeder screw open just. Alright, give me my wrench back. Just a little bit more. Alright, let's see how that works. Alright, that's looking pretty good. We'll close this up. Alright. Make sure that's tight. Alright, so see if you can see me here. So I've done the rears one time. I'm going to pull the wheels off the front to access the bleeder screws on the calipers. We'll do the same procedure on the front. Check our pedal again. If we need to, we'll go around the car one more time. Try and pull some more air out of the system until we get a good firm pedal. Alright, next day. And I've performed basically the same thing I did on the rear brakes with bleeding. Cracked open the bleeder screws, used my syringe, drew fluid out of the calipers, got all the air out of the system, and I checked the pedal. I got a nice firm pedal inside the car, so I'll call that a success. These are a little tight just because these calipers are probably, first of all, these are not a very common caliper. These Avanti 2s use a Dunlop brand caliper, and Dunlop is more commonly associated with tires than brake systems. But back in the 50s and 60s, Dunlop was an innovator in brake systems. They had some of the earliest disc brake systems, mainly were used on aircraft. So I guess Avanti figured if they're good enough for an airplane, they're good enough for our cars. And they had a caliper made up with a solid rotor. Now, I've read some things about these brakes, and from what I understand, they're not the greatest brake systems. The cars are probably way faster than what these brakes can handle. These pads are very small. I think they're maybe about 3 inches wide across by 4 inches tall. Not a lot of surface area for your braking, so if I was to keep this car, I would be looking for some sort of an aftermarket upgrade as far as the brakes on the front go. With the disc brakes, bigger caliper, bigger pads, bigger rotors, vented rotors so that they cool better. That would really improve the braking on this car. So, but we've got brakes. Now it's back to getting the engine where it'll run better, idle good, and then we're going to see if we can get the car to move under its own power. Okay, well, I got the engine running again. I put some gas in it. The fuel pump, the electric fuel pump they have on it seems to be working good. And I got it started up and had a little bit of a vacuum leak where that EGR block-off plate is. So I put a new bolt in there, got that tightened up. Seems to be running a lot better now. And I checked the transmission, and it seems to be working. I had reverse and forward, so we're going to see if we can't go for a ride. Are you ready to go for a ride, Ashton?
In this car?
Yes.
On the road?
On the road.
Yeah, I want to.
All right, let's go.
I have to buckle up.
We're just going to ride through the neighborhood.
Ride to the neighborhood?
Yep.
Then come back?
Yep.
Okay, I have to buckle?
Never even touch the gas.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna watch where you're going, Papa. Okay, let's go. Up.
She's still running a little rough. I think the gasket on that EGR block off probably needs to be replaced.
Oh, it's gonna fall down. Oh. Okay, you doing it?
Here she is, moving under her own power for the first time in probably about 6 years.
Well, Bobby is going to the neighborhood. Oh. Whoa. Okay.
Alright, we don't have very much brakes, but we've got some brakes. I'd have to say we're working on the rear brakes only.
It's not going fast.
Well, we can't go too fast. The brakes aren't working too well. But we'll take it through the neighborhood. Take it up the road here. Yep, we got rear brakes only. So we got something going on with the fronts. I think maybe we got a blockage somewheres, or the calipers are just froze and they're not working.
Where's our neighborhood go?
Just up the road here.
Up the road here?
I don't know if the transmission's not wanting to shift either.
This car's so powerful.
Yeah, transmission's not too happy. So we're gonna turn around here and go back to the shop.
Yeah, turn around.
Or we don't make it back.
You're going west.
It is driving under its own power. Yeah, we're not getting any shifting out of the transmission. Never did check the transmission fluid. That could be a problem. Alright, so we made it back to the shop. We're finishing up our two-part series on this Avanti and will it run and will it drive, and we got it to the point where we drove it out of the shop on its own power and down the road and back. We know after sitting for so many years and this car is all original that it's just going to have some problems, some issues. It needs everything to be gone through, I'm sure. New brake system, transmission definitely needs some work. So we're gonna leave it at that, and we're gonna get a hold of the customer and tell him that the car is running and driving again, and then he can decide just what he wants to do with the car. So you may see this car up for sale. If you're interested in it, leave me a note in the comments below for the video, and I can put you in contact with the owner and you can take it from there. So thanks for following along with this. What do you think, Ashton? Tell everybody thank you and see you again soon.
Thank you, see you again soon.